Hey, what if I told you there's something that most of you are doing on your Zoom and Teams calls that you think makes you look all professional, but is actually having the opposite effect? Well, today I'm going to share with you a surprisingly unprofessional tip that you can use when you're working from home that will instantly make you better at your job. Stick around. Look, all things being equal, people do business with people they like. But people like people that they have a connection with. They like people that they can have a conversation with, that they share context with. Now, this came up the other day. I was having a call with a customer of mine. She's based in New Zealand. She's in insurance sales. And we were chatting away about it. And she was saying that she struggles to get some of the same personal connection via Zoom that she would when she's in person. And the example she gave me was that she arrived at this one customer's home and, they walked into the living room, and in the corner of the living room was a pole dancing pole. And immediately she was like, "Oh, look at you." And the lady had a bit of a laugh and she said, "I did classes myself." They had this great conversation about it. Next thing, they're sitting on the floor, going through the paperwork, and of course the sale was made. But she said, "I struggle to make the same connection when I'm doing it on a Zoom call." And I looked at her, I said, "Well, look at what's happening here." So I want you to imagine something. When we're in a 360 degree of somebody's house, right? When you're walking around somebody's home, so you walk into the room, and as you're looking around, you get different views of things. You can see down here is like exercise equipment. You can go over here and you can see like all different snowboards and things like this. And that's a lot for you to have a conversation with. That's a lot for you to be able to say, "Hey, my goodness, do you snowboard? Oh, where do you go? What's your favorite place?" And start having a conversation. You now have a shared connection. And this, my friends, is important. But when I was standing chatting to her that day, all I saw was this small, narrowed phone-sized screen. And when I asked her about it, she said, "Yeah, well, I'm in my daughter's bedroom, so I don't want people to be able to see too much." And I get it, but we've got to give them something. You see, everybody that converses with me, they can chat about skateboards, they can chat about my books, chat about board games, they could chat about many, many different things in different scenarios. Even this background, which I use for some of my Zoom calls, it lets people in a completely different way, right? You can see my favorite artist, Norman O'Flynn. You can see my second favorite artist. Obviously, my favorite artist is my wife, Jasmine Jagger. Right? You can see some of my board games I love. Hamish and Andy up there. You can see Rubik's Cubes. I can solve a Rubik's Cube. Can you? That's something to talk about. Heck, if you look carefully, you can even see Ted doing a talk, right? A TED talk. Yeah, I don't know. Get it? Get it? Either way, you can see something that we can have a conversation about. And that's the whole point. Even Kevin, our head trainer, when he's presenting, he used to be a professional drummer in a band called First Project. And so behind him, he always has his drum kit. And it's a great point of discussion. Anybody who's involved in music asks him about it. And of course, it's a chance for him to say that he's performed in over 20 countries and done amazing things. They now see him differently. They see him as a performer. And that's fantastic. Even when I didn't have this studio and I was downstairs in my living room, the old backdrop that I had of my board games, that was enough to get people going. Everyone would be like, "Dude, have you read all those books behind you?" And I was like, "They're not books, they're board games." And then they were like, "What? Those are all board games." And then we get chatting about it, and it's amazing, and there's a conversation, and that conversation is connection, and connection is everything. So why am I telling you all of this? I'm telling you because I'm sick to death of you giving me nothing to talk about. And more importantly, I'm sick of these horrifically bad virtual Zoom backgrounds showing you at the office. What the fuck? Missing link one. So let me explain why this matters so much. About a decade ago, a study was done with MBA students, and these were students studying negotiation. And so they brought them all into a room and they sat them down and they said, "Hey, we want you to negotiate this issue." And they divided them into two groups. The one group went into one room and they paired them all off. And this group was told, just jump in straight away and do some negotiation. So they jumped in, they started negotiating, and actually it was quite cool. When the time the test was finished, 55% of them had come to an agreement. So that was fantastic. The second group, they were in a different room. And in this room, what they'd done is they said to them, "Okay, just before you start doing anything, just meet the person, chat to them a bit about them, find something you have in common with them. Find something you have in common with the other person." So they sat and they engaged and then they found something. And when they had something in common, they had to sit down. And then they had to start negotiating. Now, here's the kicker. That group, when they started negotiating, 90% of them came to an agreement. But here's the really big deal. Of those agreements, they were 18% better for both parties on average across the board. That means they reached a conclusion that was more mutually beneficial, because I don't know if you've heard, but almost all negotiations end with both parties walking away with a suboptimal deal. Just by finding shared context, they were able to chat better. In fact, if there was one thing that people really misunderstood about our old Missing Link offices, award-winning offices, was that everybody thought it was about, a nice place for people to work. But that wasn't it. It doesn't matter how cool where you work is, after you've been there 2 weeks, it's just work. What was really remarkable about it and what we designed with intent was that there was many, many different areas in which you could have a conversation about. There was something for everyone. We wanted to make sure that it was impossible you not to have a conversation with us about it, and more importantly, have a conversation with somebody else at home about it after the fact. We made conversations happen. Now, I hear some of you saying, you see, this is why we should all be heading back to the office. But it's not, because your offices are boring AF. Sitting in a meeting room that looks like this, or this, or this. No matter how impressive the view out the window is, it doesn't make a difference. First of all, it's one-sided. So there's only one person's context. On a Zoom call or a Teams call, both contexts are shared. I can get into your world and you can get into mine. That's a level up. But the other thing is that these backgrounds are so deeply sanitized, right? They're designed to look dull and boring and reflect the entity that is the corporation. And that's not you. That's not personal. People don't build relationships with corporations. That's why we keep on using the word the brand, because talking about the corporation feels a lot more soulless. But we do build, relationships with people. That's that line at the beginning. All things being equal, people do business with people they like. And that, my friends, is why I want you to let people in. I want you to look at your background and think, how can I be a little bit more unprofessional? And by that, I mean personal. And by being more personal, how can I build more accelerated connections that are more meaningful with the people that I'm engaging with? By doing that, you will be able to get to business quicker. You'll be able to have a level of trust that is higher, and you'll be in far better shape. Now, doesn't that feel worth doing? Now, I'm not suggesting that you just sit there and you have all just sit in your kid's bedroom and randomly show the bed in the background. I'm suggesting that you curate a space that reflects the conversation points that you want to come across, the things that you choose, the bit of your life that you want to let people into. I like to keep my family life relatively separate. You're not going to see absolutely everything in there, but you are going to see some. And that's enough for us to have a good conversation with. So the challenge I want to give you this week is to ask yourself, what can I include? What small little thing can I include into my work from home setup that can immediately spark a conversation? And I want you to, every single Zoom call that you do, or Teams call, or whatever WebEx call. Okay, settle down. For every call that you do, I want you to just put a little checkbox. Did they comment? Did they converse? And if nobody's conversing, find something else to drop into the background until they do. Let me know down in the comments if you can make this work. And until next time, lead loud. Hey, maybe Jim was wrong. Maybe Michael Scott's Tube City wasn't such a bad idea after all.